What's going on, Pick Vault Nation? Welcome to the Pick Vault. I'm Matt Taylor alongside Danny Siv, and it is Thanksgiving Eve, and we're thankful you're tuning in and listening here to the Pick Vault. And it's an important episode, so we're leading off here talking about Monday Night Football, talking about Bruce Arian, talking about Tom Brady, and talking about the state of the NFC South. Really, the Saints at the top of the division at 8-2, and the Buccaneers, after losing on Monday night, are now on the outside looking in that division at 7-3. And that might be stirring up some controversy over there in Tampa Bay because now Bruce Arian is in the media today talking about how his quarterback play has been nothing shy of piss poor. Breaking down that, and then we're talking about the college football playoff. Obviously, last night at 7 p.m., the rankings just got released. And there's a lot of controversy and turmoil there. We're going to break down that and much more. You don't want to miss this. Keep listening. This is the Pick Vault.
You are now entering the Pick Vault, taking sports betting to the next level. No more winging it. It's time to get your money. This is the premier predictive sports media platform and entertainment network. We use artificial intelligence, computer-backed simulations, sports news, sports data, and expert analysis to help you unlock your money. Get ready to start winning. This is the Pick Vault, and this is Matt Taylor and Danny Siv.
This the Pick Vault. Gonna sit you down and listen to this real talk. Ain't no first or second option, this the default. Turning picks into these dollars, gonna let them fall. Raining down these daily winnings like an aerosol. Analytics calculated just to win it all. Problems when it comes to choosing, we got all them solved. Got the picks that needin' fixed, and you know who to call. Cause this the Pick Vault.
And he is right. That is J Live Official. Go check him out on Apple Music, Spotify, or right here on Instagram. Dan, like we said, this is the Pick Vault, and we are sitting here on Thanksgiving Eve, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And today's a big day, not only in the country of the United States talking about Thanksgiving, but it's also a huge day in the sports world because today's the first day of college basketball. No, normally, without COVID-19, we would have saw some of the best teams in the country going head-to-head today. Specifically in Maui, we're talking about Duke and Baylor and some teams that really are in a tournament and would have probably played each other this over the weekend. That's not going to happen. Obviously, here with COVID-19, the restrictions, the regulations, games have been canceled, and we're talking about a season like no other that will begin today in college basketball. So again, that's something you don't want to miss, don't want to tune in, and don't worry. The Pick Vault will have you covered and with all your college football needs as it pertains to sports gambling, sports wagering, and picks, plays, and score projections. So, Dan, before we dive into anything else, let's talk about what's going on in the NFC South. Let's talk about what's going on with Tom Brady. Let's talk about what's going on with the Buccaneers, because the Buccaneers are a team that they go out and they have a ton of weapons. They have not only the greatest quarterback of all time, they go out and get a new coach, Bruce Arian. They go out and get a ton of new weapons to add to what was already a decent core, specifically from the receiving cores and running backs and everything. They go out and add Fournette. They go out and add Antonio Brown. They go out and add, like we said, Mike Evans is already there. They go out and do a bunch of moves to make this team probably the greatest offense we've ever seen in the history of the NFL. They go out and get Todd Bowles, and they strengthen their defense. They again, everything from top to bottom this Buccaneers team has done is saying this year is championship or bust. But what happened on Monday Night Football is extraordinary. We're talking about a team in the Buccaneers that loses in primetime football 2 weeks ago to the Saints. They put up 3 points in primetime action football. And then next week, they come back and they get a huge win, big win over the Carolina Panthers. Everything's starting to turn. The conversation's starting to shift back to this team looks great. Then what happens? They lose a very tight game, 27-24, to the Rams on Monday Night Football behind a piss-poor effort from Tom Brady. And so, Dan, before we play what Bruce Arian says, and before we talk about what the coach of this organization, the leader, would you say, of this locker room, other than Tom Brady, right, is saying about his quarterback, Tom Brady. So before we dive into that, Dan, what do you think the problem is with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Yes, they're 7-4. Yes, They're 3-2 at home. Yes, they're in a good position to make the playoffs, but clearly, there's a little bit of a divide, specifically as we're talking about primetime football.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be something that's interesting going forward because, like you said, Matt, when you get to the end of the season, every game's going to turn into prime time. And right now, the Bucks don't have that street cred of, you get embarrassed by the Saints. And I don't want to say you get embarrassed by the Rams, but they definitely didn't play Tampa Bay Buccaneer football with the lineup they have on the field. And talking about Bruce Arians, I know he said things about Tom Brady, and we'll go into that and what he actually said. But for him to go at a quarterback like Tom Brady, who is one of the greatest of all time, it really kills me because at the end of that game, Tom Brady threw a pick, and I'm not going to neglect it. It was bad. It was a bad interception to end the game, but there will be plenty of other times that we've seen Tom Brady drive down that field and get that game-winning touchdown, get that game-winning field goal, put the kicker in the right position. So for Bruce Arians to go at Tom Brady the way he did, it kind of shocks me because I don't know if this is Bruce trying to get that leverage on Tom Brady, say, I don't care really who Tom Brady is, I'm still the coach. Or is he really trying to just get a fire under Tom and play better than maybe he has been?
See, I don't think it's either of the two, to be honest with you. I don't think it's either of the two there. My take on it is I think, again, when things look odd, when things don't look up or don't add up, I think there's an intentional effort that's being done here. I think Bruce Arians is saying, like you said, in the locker room, he wants to have that cred. It has nothing to do with he's going to coach every player the exact same. And again, that's something he's been trying to instill since day one. Yeah. He doesn't care if it's Antonio Brown. He doesn't care if it's Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette. And when you have a team with the weapons they have and with the star power they have, you kind of have to coach in that way. But I have a problem with the way he went about it because he singled out Tom Brady. He singled out the greatest quarterback of all time. And like you said, throughout the career of Tom Brady, we've seen him do it countless times, get big wins in big situations and come through for his team in the end. And again, we're going to see it with this team. Absolutely. This team will make the playoffs, and this team will win games in the playoffs, and this team will be poised to make a Super Bowl run this year. We know that. But the problem that I'm seeing here is that on primetime football, they can't get the job done. So what happens when they do get to those big games in the playoffs? What's going to happen? Because now we've seen it 2 times in a row. One time, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, hold on a second. We got to look into this again. Yeah. And all I'm going to say is this is now the second time in primetime action we've seen Tom Brady play very poor for Tom Brady's sake. Again, he had 2 touchdowns, two picks. For normal quarterbacks, that's a bad day, not a terrible. For Tom Brady, it's a terrible day. Yeah. We're used to the precise precision, the effort. We're used to, again, perfection. And I think that's why when Tom Brady doesn't reach that level of perfection, we all of a sudden freak out. And here's the quote. I want to play this for you guys, Pickball Nation. This is Bruce Arians talking about his quarterback, Tom Brady. And just listen to the way he answers the questions. About a minute long, but listen to the way he answers questions with the reporter about his quarterback, and we'll break it down right after it.
I think he hasn't played his best football against the better teams in the NFC so far.
Still trying to figure that out. I mean, at times we look really, really good, and then there are times when we obviously don't. I felt very, very comfortable in the 2-minute drive until that throw.
Both interceptions, I mean, were they just poor throws? Nobody was really.
Well, the first one he got hit. He got hit. It looked like I had Chris going right down the middle, and stepped up and just didn't get enough on it with the pressure. And the last one was just a misread of the coverage.
Did you consider calling the plays yourself or doing something different with Byron or what?
Oh no, I thought he called a good ball game. We got to execute better. When guys are open, we got to hit them, and we can't misread coverage. We got to protect a little bit better when we do have guys deep, and let him hit that guy. Instead of have that pressure that cost us an interception. Just as a collective, everybody's got to play better.
Now, again, that is Bruce Arians, the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and a coach that throughout his career has been a coach that's known for no nonsense. He's known for the fact that he's going to coach you up no matter what. He doesn't care who you are, what you do, and again. But this just came out now 30 seconds ago, and this is coming out directly from ESPN. They're saying that they're hearing rumors that tensions between Tom Brady and Bruce Arians might be real.
Really?
So again, we're talking about some of this drama now that goes on. And this is the problem, right? This is something that we kind of actually touched on before the season. And that is the fact that when you are Tom Brady and you are the greatest quarterback of all time and you are a guy that has so much clout, Tom Brady can walk into any room anywhere in the entire country, and anyone, doesn't matter if you're a boy, girl, male, female, young, old, poor, rich, white, black, Hispanic,
doesn't matter.
Republican, Democrat, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, it doesn't matter. You know who Tom Brady is.
Of course.
And you know that he probably, again, there's a little bit of controversy, but probably is the greatest quarterback to ever throw a football at any point in the history of football.
Completely agree.
And so when you are Tom Brady and you move from situation that you had in New England, situation where you won 6 championships, you won 6 Super Bowl, everyone in the city of Boston, the city of New England, the surrounding area, anyone in the Northeast, until you hit New York and you get the Giants fans and you go down. Everyone loves you, Tom. So why move? Why? Because you want to build your brand. You want to build your business. You want to start something. And great. I love it. But here's the problem with that. All of a sudden you move there and things might be a little bit different, right? Different coach, different style, different playing, different. You're just in a totally different situation. And I think that's something that we're now seeing could be a problem for Tom.
Well, right, Matt, because also this is something that we even saw previously. In week 1, week 2, we saw Bruce Arians. This is the first time I would say we saw him, like you said, single out Tom Brady. He's kind of gone around the bush a little bit in press conferences saying, he's not playing Tom Brady football, which is fine. Like you said, credit where credit's due, and you got to tell a guy when he's not doing well, no matter who it is, if it's Tom Brady or, Daniel Jones, it doesn't make a difference. But right now, what they're dealing with in Tampa Bay, the fact that Tom Brady and the coach Bruce Arians are feuding, like you just said, that just came out. That is a major, major problem in Tampa Bay because, again, you're dealing with 2 guys. I think Bruce Arians has way too big of an ego even going into this season. Everyone looks at Bruce Arians as some great coach, great guy, all of this. But what did Bruce Arians really do?
That goes back to right there, the John Gruden effect. Now, John Gruden, in my opinion, has earned maybe a little bit of respect, a little bit of clout. And again, Bruce Arian has as well. This guy was in the media day in and day out talking about football, and I think Rex Ryan is starting to get the same kind of people to start to like him.
Right.
I mean, I did not like Rex Ryan whatsoever. I'll be honest with you, I didn't. I thought he was an arrogant asshole, to be honest. But now, seeing a different side of him, seeing him break down plays, seeing him talk about sports, talk about football, talk about everything going on in the locker room, talking about the whole spectrum. I love the guy. Yeah. If a team that I loved all of a sudden went out and got Rex Ryan, I'd be thrilled. Same thing with John Gruden. When he was available, again, he only would sign with one team, and that was the Raiders, and that was for $100 million, a ridiculous 10-year contract.
I do the same thing.
He did it.
Yeah.
And now Bruce Arians kind of the same thing. Tom Brady needs a quarterback. Tom Brady needs a situation. Tom Brady, this was all finessed behind the scenes. And I'm not saying it's the same thing we've seen in the NBA with what LeBron James has done. I mean, LeBron James goes to the Lakers. He pretty much picks the coach. Yeah. He pretty much picks his team. He's pretty much the GM of the organization. And I'm not saying that's exactly what Brady's doing here, but very similar. Like, we're seeing very similar comparisons and parallels between Tom Brady at this moment in his career at 43 years old and LeBron James at this moment in his career in the NBA.
Well, yeah. And Matt, diving a little more into the Bucks, as much as he blames Tom Brady, why don't you turn to Todd Bowles and say, what are you doing? Jared Goff runs play action every single play, and they got torn up by Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, over 130 yards apiece from each of them. And to be honest with you, Jared Goff isn't really known. He used to be known for throwing the ball, deep balls downfield. But all they do is little dink and dump plays. These guys are picking up 30, 40 yards after the catch. This defense didn't really show up again. It's Jared Goff.
I know, but Dan, the thing that you're not thinking of is it's not Jared Goff. This has nothing to do with Jared Goff. This is Sean McVay's play style. This is exactly how they made a Super Bowl run. Jared Goff really, really doesn't throw the ball down the field, like you're saying a lot. Even the year they made it to the Super Bowl, that team was defensive-minded. Defense. Again, pause this conversation about Tom Brady. Pause the conversation about the Buccaneers. Let's just talk about what's going on right now with the Rams, because this Rams team, we're seeing, in my opinion, direct parallels to what Bill Belichick has done for years. You don't need Jared Goff to be a stud. Tom Brady, yes, he's been the greatest of all time. But really, has he? I mean, I'm going to ask the question. Really? Has he? Yes, he's been in the league for 20 years. He puts up ridiculous numbers. He's been on some of the best teams of all time. And frankly, he's won with very little talent before. Right. We've seen him do it year in and year out in New England. But again, the conversation, is it Brady? Is it Belichick? We're now seeing both kind of struggle in their own ways. Brady struggling in his new system. Brady struggling, statistically speaking, with some of the best weapons he's ever had.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Belichick struggling with a new quarterback. Belichick struggling with, again, building an offense, because Brady was kind of the leader of the offense, as much as, in my opinion, the offensive coordinator over there gets a ton of credit. I think it was Brady. And the defensive side of things, it's all Belichick. Now with the Rams, going back to the conversation here, now with the Rams, you're seeing the same kind of thing. We're seeing defense first. We're going to stop you up front. We're going to have the best front seven. We're going to come at you with pressure with Aaron Donald. We're going to come at you with a very good deep backfield. We're going to have Ramsey in the backfield. We're going to do things, and we're going to make it very difficult for you. Yep. If you beat us, great. If you don't, you don't. Then on the offensive side of things, we don't need to throw the ball down the field, because, like you're saying, oh, they're just doing dumps, passes across the field.
It works, though. It
definitely
definitely works. Yeah.
This is all something that again, it will take a year for coaches to figure it out.
100%.
And it worked, and we've seen it now twice. The Rams made a Super Bowl run doing an offense similar to what they're doing now. Different, but similar. What they do the year after, they didn't make the playoffs with the same team. No one really got injured for that Rams team. They went from a Super Bowl loss, very close Super Bowl loss, to Brady, to the following year, what? Not making the playoffs.
Yeah, miserable.
Now, he's made adjustments on that offense. He's made different, and all of a sudden this offense is very, very hard to figure out. It'll take a year. And the one thing I like about McVay and what he's doing now is he's adapting to the game itself. He's creating a new style of football that we haven't really seen at any moment in the history of the NFL. And that is how you're successful. Belichick does it with his defensive schemes. And McVay is doing it with his offensive schemes and telling his quarterback, you don't have to throw the ball downfield. You don't have to be a big-time player and have big-time moments. Instead, I'm going to make it easy for you. Let's just confuse the hell out of them. Let's just make it very, very difficult to defend. And then, it opens up things downfield.
Everything.
Or, if they overplay it and they don't play the play action, they play for the play action, hand the ball freaking off.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing an offensive style that I believe will really push this team forward.
Right. And Matt, so what you're saying with that offensive style also, which tires these defenses out, they use 3 running backs. They use 2 tight ends. I mean, like you said, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, to me, yes, they are wide receivers. That's what they are. But at the same time, they're a very different wide receiver. They're more of slot guys. And like you said, that's why the dink and dumps work. But again, with this defense, we talked about on that Monday episode about how this defense hasn't really played anyone. They played the NFC East. Great. You covered them well. Everyone should. No excuses. But then you come off the bye week. You beat the Seahawks, again, in your division. Then you come and stop Tom Brady and the weapons he has. So I'll be the first one to say, I thought this Rams team was a little fake in the defensive side. But, I mean, credit where credit's due. This defense showed that Aaron Donald is a beast. They stopped. And
they put up 27 points against one of the top defenses in the league, in the Buccaneers. So all I'm telling you is, not only is their defense good, don't forget, this team is now 7-3. Like you said, forget the fact that they play the NFC East. Yes, you're right. They do play the NFC East. But now that's no longer the excuse, because they beat the Seahawks and the Buccaneers, and they're coming in a moment where they're in the toughest division in football. So on a consistent basis, they have to play the Cardinals twice. They have to play the Seahawks twice. I mean, that is very tough right there. So you play the NFC. Now you add in the Buccaneers. And all of a sudden, this organization, the Rams, is starting to look like a very, very, very real contender.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to point out, though, they're in the NFC West. They're in the division with the Seahawks and the Cardinals. And as much as they play them twice, here's the thing. Both those teams, the Seahawks are 7-3 as well. So the Rams and the Seahawks are both 7-3. And the Cardinals are right there on their tail at 6-4. So all I'm going to say is this division, the NFC West, is going to maybe potentially have 3 teams at least competing right now for a playoff spot, but 3 teams that could be in the playoffs itself.
Yeah, I
in the NFC. I mean, right now, if you were guessing, if you were talking about we are predictive sports media, and I can give you the analysis, and we can break that down later in this week. But if you were guessing, right, out of those 3 teams, if only 2 were to make it, because I do think at least 2 of them will make it. If only 2 were to make it, who would you take right now? Would it be the Seahawks and the Rams, or would it be the Seahawks and the Cardinals? I think that's the conversation.
I'll be honest. I think as much as everyone's going to maybe think I'm crazy, that I'm not all over the Cardinals hype train yet. I think right now you got to pick the Rams and the Seahawks. And I think that goes back to everything that we always say. The better coach, the better system, the better quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Kingsbury, what he does in Arizona is phenomenal. Kyler Murray doing things at a different level than ever before. But for me, what it's going to come down to is experience and who's been there in the moment. I just can't see. I know Russell Wilson hasn't had the best couple weeks, and that team, that defense hasn't played great. But at the end of the day, Matt, they are a team that I could easily see winning that NFC West, let alone going to the playoffs with the Rams because of where the Rams are right now. The Rams defense, after watching that Monday night game, they are 100% for real. Better than the Cardinals D. I know the Cardinals D is a little bit on the rise with a young defense, but I really think the Rams and the Seahawks would be my 2 picks to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think they're in an NFC division where an NFC conference, to correct myself, an NFC conference across the board that's going to be very, very tough to get in. I think the AFC is very top heavy. I mean, you have the Chiefs and the Steelers. And then you the Colts are there. I mean, but it starts to teeter a little bit. This NFC might not have the number one. But right now, I mean, you got the Saints, you got the Buccaneers, you got the Seahawks, you got the Cardinals, you got the Rams. I mean, there's teams across the board. And then you got the NFC East. Someone's going to make it from the NFC East.
Giants, baby.
But again, that's very poor again on that. But I'm saying this right now, between the 2 conferences, I think the AFC is very top heavy, and I think the NFC is very deep. I think even teams like the Panthers are very strong. I think teams like the Cowboys. I mean, I know they're in the NFC East. Like, that's a team that could put up. They win this week, but that's a team that could put up a real hard challenge week in and week out. And in the AFC, I think there's a lot of teams. The Texans that will lose games. Yeah. That'll lose games like that very easily, very quickly. Before we move on and talk about the college football playoff, because we do need to talk about the college football playoff because there's a lot of controversy to be had there and a lot of conversation to be had there between you and I want to just read you the quote one more time here from Bruce Arians. He says, "We've got the guys open. He's just missed them." He is in Tom Brady. Yeah. There are times when the coverage dictates, you go to that guy. I think we could do a better job of utilizing the deep ball in our game plan. But when they're there, we have to hit them. We can't have them going off our fingertips, and we can't overthrow them. I mean, that's a direct quote from Bruce Arians. Next thing. Hold on, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Quote, "Other than the deep ball, I think Tom Brady, is getting confused at times with the coverage that might be causing some inaccurate balls. But I don't see it at practice whatsoever. We're not missing the deep balls in practice. That's for sure. So it's just a matter of, on Sunday, hitting them." For me, that's astounding to hear out of his mouth. It's astounding.
I would say the same too, Matt, because in that clip that you played earlier when he was talking, like you kind of mentioned too, he kind of backtracked. He said it was Brady, and then he started bringing up, the pressure of the O-line. The reason that the deep ball isn't working on that Monday night game, because you have an offensive line that's without your left guard, without your left tackle, and you got Aaron Donald on the other side of this line. So my thing is, in practice, he's throwing the deep ball because no one's going to touch Tom Brady in practice. No one's going to try and get to him. He's hitting the deep ball.
I disagree. I think you're talking about a different defense. I'm agreeing with what you're saying. They're not going to touch him in practice, but that's not what we're talking about. He's talking about when he has time, he's missing him. Tom Brady had time. It wasn't like Aaron Donald was there hitting him. It's just not the case. And Tom Brady will be the first one to say that. And Tom Brady did say that. And that's why I have a problem with Bruce Arians. Tom Brady, before Bruce Arians comes out, Tom Brady said it just was a really bad read. Cam was running up a seam, and at the last second, I saw the safety coming up, and I just popped it over Cam's head. Just a very bad read, a bad throw, a bad decision, everything. It cannot happen. Tom Brady, taking the accountability.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, leader in the locker room. Tom Brady. Bruce Arians, again, you could be hard on quarterbacks. You could be hard on all your players, and that could be your MO. That's fine. But what I have a problem with is, when are you going to take credit? When are you going to take responsibility? Look at Tom Brady in the locker room. Look what he's doing. He's saying it's on me. It's a bad throw. I'm sorry. Hold on, Bruce Arians. Maybe you should be listening to Tom Brady, the 6-time Super Bowl champion. Maybe you should be listening to the things that he's doing. Watch what he's doing in practice. Because he's there hitting them in practice. Yeah, he's going to hit them in the games. Don't worry. It's Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's
Tom Brady, right? Let's stop forgetting about it. It's Tom freaking Brady. He's going to hit them. He's going to make the plays when it matters most. He's probably the only guy in sports that when the lights are the brightest, when the moment looks bleakest, he comes out of ashes and he gets your team a victory. We've seen it for years in New England. And frankly, I am not betting a minute against this team. This team is going to win the Super Bowl, and I think this is just part of the conversation right now. I changed my Super Bowl pick. I'm taking the Buccaneers by 1,000,000.
Wow.
I'm serious. I'm taking the Buccaneers. I'm over it. I think Brady is now going to be on a mission, and frankly, I think he's going to sign an extension here, and maybe Bruce Arians won't be back.
I was going to say,
maybe we get Bruce Arians out of here. So again, we'll talk more about what's going on with Tom Brady, what's going on with the Buccaneers, and really the state of the NFL specifically because tomorrow we have a major event. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving. Everyone's going to be eating that turkey with their family, eating that stuffing, the gravy, everything, whatever it is that your family does. We want you to just tune in tomorrow because the Pick Vault's going to give you guys a rundown of all 3 of the games in the NFL. We're going to talk about all 3 of them in great detail and give you guys picks, player props, and score projections for those games. You don't want to miss it, so make sure you guys tune in tomorrow for a Thanksgiving We're Thankful for You episode.
Gobble, gobble.
So without further ado, Dan, let's shift the conversation now and talk about what's going on in the college football playoff.
Talk about turmoil, Matt.
Because, again, we're in a year where everything has been flipped on its head. We're in a year where, again, common sense seems to be thrown out the window for a lot of people across the board.
I would say so.
And we're in a year right now where Trevor Lawrence can't play on the field. He could sit on the sideline. Games will be canceled in college football. We're doing socially distancing, but yet the college football playoff committee meets and sits at a table together with 25 freaking people at a table. Yes, they had masks on for the recording of it, but I'm sure the masks weren't on the whole time. But frankly, that's not the point. The point is the common sense thrown out the window. And I think maybe the committee's only common sense of actually meeting in person, that wasn't the only common sense that got thrown out the window. I think looking at the rankings here, looking at the ratings for college football playoff, I think we're talking about a lack of common sense. So, Dan, break down your initial thoughts on the college football original 4 teams and also where the football playoff teams on the outside looking in. What are your thoughts on the rankings as they stand currently?
I mean, the only issue I have with the rankings standing currently, I mean, you have obviously Alabama at 1. You have Notre Dame at 2, rightfully so. I really don't have a problem with either of those teams. I think this is one of the best Notre Dame teams that we've seen in a while. But again, with that Alabama team, they're not a number 1 Alabama team that we've seen before. And Saban's kind of even come out and said that this Bama team isn't going to win with the defense. It's going to win with the offense. But then you keep going down that list, Matt. You got Clemson at 3, and truthfully, I don't fully agree with it, and I'll be the first guy to say I'm a big Clemson guy. I'm a big T-Log fan, but I don't know if they really deserve that 3 spot. If anything, I think I'd put them down to 4, because then you have an Ohio State team that obviously the Big Ten started their season late, and I understand you have to take that into consideration. But just off an eye test, this Ohio State team hasn't really done much to me, whatsoever. But the one team that has, and I know I'm going to let you go off a little bit on this because I know Kyle Trask is your guy and Dan Mullen is your guy. The Florida Gators sitting at 6. I really think, Matt, that they're a top 4 team in the country. I don't know how you can not say that they are. I know Texas A&M is at 5, which I think is the only reason is because they beat Florida. But overall, I think this Florida team is the team to beat in this whole entire college football playoff.
Absolutely. I think Florida is going to win the national championship this year. And again, that might sound crazy to some. I just think this Florida team is full. I mean, this team is complete. This team not only has a great coach, he has a great quarterback. This team has maybe the best quarterback in college football right now.
I agree.
And not just from skill level. I'm talking about complete package quarterback. Right now, if I sat at the clock, and again, I'm not saying I've been right about draft picks yet because we were just talking about last year into this year. But I said to Dan, and Dan, you can back me up on this 100%. I said, everyone's talking about Joe Burrow. Everyone's talking about Tua. And I said the number one quarterback in this draft by far. I said not even close. By far is Justin Herbert. And I said that last year. And right now, everyone's talking about Justin Fields. Everyone's talking about Trevor Lawrence being the greatest prospect to ever come out since Peyton Manning. I mean, everyone's talking about all of these guys. It's the same freaking thing. Kyle Trask is the number one quarterback in this draft next year. And Trask and this Florida team is going to be in the college football playoff because I believe they're the most full team in college sports. I think they have a great defense, a great coach, a great quarterback, and they're going to be in. I think Texas A&M, look at their remaining schedule. I mean, they have a ton of games. They play LSU. That's a tough game.
Always.
They play LSU, and then they play Tennessee the following week. So all of a sudden, back-to-back, those two teams, they easily could lose one of those games.
I want to see someone.
And they already lost in primetime action to Alabama. And wouldn't it mean so much? I mean, wouldn't it be huge? Would it be huge for LSU in a season where they've struggled tremendously? If they could beat a team that's in the top 5, could beat a team in the top 10, could make a little bit of a statement. And then don't fool yourself. This Tennessee team is very, very talented. They're going to be tough to beat. And again, it's going to be hard to go back-to-back, in my opinion, go week-to-week, back-to-back. They still play Auburn on December 5th next week. They still play Auburn. Game, Auburn's number 22 in the country. So again, your remaining schedule is LSU, Auburn, and then and then Tennessee for Texas A&M. Texas A&M plays LSU, Auburn, and then Tennessee. Those 3 games are going to be very, very tough. Florida, on the other hand, don't fool yourself. They have a tough schedule as well. They play Kentucky, should be a win. Be a win.
Absolutely.
Tennessee should be a win. Then they play LSU. Again,
better team.
You're playing the same kind of a schedule remaining. I think if the Gators win out, and they win out in the fashion that I believe they can, and they should hop over Texas A&M immediately. Because this Florida team only lost to Texas A&M by 3. Other than that 3 points right there, they're undefeated.
And that was early in the season too.
I agree. And they have some quality wins. I mean, this team has shown up in the biggest moments. They beat Miami. I mean, I know Miami's a top 10 team now, or was at the time a top 10 team. And all of a sudden, you're talking about, they're number 10 currently right now in the rankings. But you're talking about a team in Florida that I just believe is the team that is going to be very tough to beat down the stretch. And I think there's a chance that a team like Notre Dame can lose this week.
Well, right.
Again, Notre Dame goes and plays UNC this week. And I could see that is a trap game and a half. I believe Notre Dame fans out there are going to be very, very high on their team. They're very happy with their team. And now that they got some clout and some respect from the committee, the voting committee, and all of a sudden they're number 2 in the country, I believe it's a trap. Sometimes we see it specifically as, again, we're talking about college basketball starting up. We see it all the time. A team finally gets the number 1 spot in the country and then they lose to a team that's unranked. It happens all the freaking time.
Yeah.
And this team, UNC, number 25 in the country, is, again, very well coached, very strong quarterback, very good defense, and discipline. Now, I'm not trying to take away from Notre Dame, but that's a game that could easily flip.
Well, right, because Matt, like you're saying, Sam Howell, I mean, that whole North Carolina offense, Ian Book, you're going to have to put up just as many points as you have been because this North Carolina offense, that's their MO. They put up points. And speaking, I know I'm going back to Florida, but to touch on that, Matt, Florida, the amount of points they put up a game, again, credit to Trask because he's breaking records that no one even really realizes. Last week when we were watching that game, through 7 games, Matt, Kyle Trask has more touchdown passes than Joe Burrow did by 2 touchdowns through 7 games. Why isn't that talked about? Joe Burrow had Justin Jefferson, who's one of the best rookie wide receivers right now in the NFL, had Jamar Chase, who's still at LSU, who's going to be a number 1 wide receiver prospect last year. So don't sleep on this kid Trask. Don't get me wrong. They have weapons too, but he throws the ball lights out. Just the way he throws his everything about him. How could you not love it? They have Mac Jones right now as the Heisman, like really the front runner, the finalist that they think is going to win. I think that's BS. I think it's because it's Bama. It's the name. Kyle Trask for the Heisman. That's my pick. Kyle Trask.
All right, so Dan and I are both high on Trask, 100% high on Trask. We're talking about him. We're high on this Florida team. Another team that I think is interesting, I'm just going to be honest, I do not believe that Notre Dame is going to be there at the end of the day. I don't believe it. I think especially they're going to have to go through Clemson one more time, in my opinion, and it's going to be very, very challenging, in my opinion, to get that done. You're talking about, like I said, a Notre Dame team that's going to have to beat Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, and I just don't see that happen. Another team that I want to watch out for here, another team that's very interesting to me, and I believe if they win out, they're in 100%. Right now, they're number 11, and that is Northwestern. Northwestern is a team that, again, they have some quality wins. They're undefeated. They're 5-0, and their remaining schedule is relatively easy. They play Michigan State, Illinois, and Minnesota.
Wins.
I think those are all 3 wins. Then you go into the tournament, and as long as you can beat, one of these teams ahead of you, as long as you could beat, some of these guys, you're in my opinion.
You know what my other point?
Ohio State. I mean, you're going to play Ohio State. And I think, in my opinion, Northwestern is a team that could easily compete with Ohio State. The reason Ohio State isn't higher in the rankings, even though they are undefeated, is because they don't pass the eye test whatsoever. They don't look the part. They don't look like a team that is going to expose you in every way. And again, that's something that I see out of Florida. And really, I do think I see it out of Northwestern. My opinion right now, if I was guessing it, I had to put money on it right now. I think the Final Four in the college football playoff, the Final Four will be Alabama, Clemson, Florida, and Northwestern.
Wow.
I think those 4 is my 4 right now. I know people are going to think I'm absolutely nuts, but I think those are my 4. And the reason, again, being they have it all ahead of them. And Ohio State is a team that I haven't seen fierceness. I haven't seen like just domination out of them whatsoever at any point so far this season.
It's a completely different Ohio State team from last year. I mean, you lose J.K. Dobbins, you lose Jeff Okudah in their secondary, because that's what really we're seeing this Ohio State team get exposed is their defense. They give up hundreds and hundreds of yards a game, and they find themselves in dogfights. And Justin Fields is another quarterback, Matt, that I know a lot of people are high on, but I was never really that high on him. I think he's got to do way more this year than he did last year, because you can't just hand the ball off to J.K. Dobbins and then play action and throw a bomb down the field. Completely different system. And yeah, I'll be the first one to say, I think you're crazy throwing Northwestern in there at the top 4. But if it happens, I don't mind it. I want to see a little bit more out of this college football playoff, which leads me to my other question for you, Matt. In a year like we always talk about, it's a year like no other. We've never dealt with COVID restrictions, protocols, teams not being able to play games. Where is your take on why don't we open this college football playoff up? Why don't we go 8 teams? Forget 4. It's so hard to choose. Like we see, teams get cancellations. How do you really choose? So what are your thoughts on opening it up?
Well, I think this year is the year to do it. And I think it gives you an opportunity as the college football playoff committee. I think it gives you an opportunity to test it out. And if it doesn't work, and if it still is a mess down the stretch, and if you're not now, instead of having the problem, who's going to be the 4th team in, now the problem is going to be who's going to be the 8th team in. But all I'm going to say is I think it gives you a free pass, because if it doesn't work, you could always go next season and say, okay, it was because of COVID we did 8 teams. Right. We're going back to the 14 playoff. Right now, again, we're talking about a year where the MLB played a 60-game regular season.
Right, and they had no problem with
You
it.
normally play 162 games. And you don't have fans, and it's just not a normal season. The NBA, same thing. The NBA playoff was all in a bubble, and they limited the amount of games being played. They limited the amount of the lengths of the series. They limited a lot of stuff. They eliminated travel, and all I'm going to say is this year is like no other. So you could try new things. You could do new things that you've wanted to try for years. And I know everyone across the board has talked about it, and it's going to be the conversation year in and year out until they eventually do it. And eventually, at some point in time, it's going to be changed to be an 8-team playoff. And I believe that's the way it should be.
Right.
You can't really extend it much more than that due to the fact that these teams are playing in conference championships down the stretch in the season, and you can't have it linger on too long. Specifically with the way they do the bowl games and everything, you got to eliminate some of the bowl games. I think that's the first thing.
I was going to note that too. Those top teams in the top 10 are going to be in big bowl games. Why don't you make them meaningful?
No, 100%. You can still call them the bowl games. You can still call them the Orange Bowl. You can still call them the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl, whatever it is.
Sugar Bowl.
But just make them part of the playoff as well. I think that would be a tremendous move for them to do here in this moment, especially in a year where I don't think you're going to be able to compare, because everyone has kind of like apples and oranges. Some teams played 5 games. Some teams have played 8 games. Some teams, again, like Clemson, their only loss on the year right now is without their star quarterback. Now, again, I'm somebody that believes we can't just give free passes away. And I do believe Clemson should not be in the top 4 right now. I think they would be if you let the season play out and they win and they beat Notre Dame in the ACC championship, then they do get in. But to be honest with you, I think it's a joke, the number 3 in the country right now. I think it's unfair to every other team out there. I think it's unfair to Ohio State. I think it's unfair to teams like BYU that are undefeated and at 14. Yeah, I think it's unfair to other teams across the board. I think it's unfair to Northwestern. I think it's unfair to Florida. I mean, Florida's loss, in my opinion, is more impressive than Notre Dame's. Than Clemson's loss to Notre Dame. Florida lost to Texas A&M, and again, they have been playing some of the best football. They remind me a lot of a team last year. Now, that team last year in LSU, I'm talking about, had not only a great coach, a great quarterback, a great system. They went undefeated, but this team didn't. This team has already got a loss. Florida has to win out. But all I'm going to say is I believe Clemson should be on the outside looking in right now. And I do believe another team, I think, should be up there at number 3 in the country. I think it's unfair at 7-1 to put Clemson there over teams like Ohio State, over teams even like Texas A&M, over teams like Florida. Again, Cincinnati's 8-0.
Cincinnati's a good football team.
Cincinnati's 8-0. They're the highest rank for a non-Power 5 team in college football playoff history. Yeah, in playoff history. That's a team that, again, should probably be higher than most. Yeah. And right now, again, in a year where you're comparing apples to oranges, teams that have a loss, don't have a loss, teams that have played 5 games or 6 games like Texas A&M versus teams that have played 8 games like Notre Dame, 8-0. So, yeah, again, if it was up to me, and again, it's not, but if it was up to me right now, the rankings would be Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Ohio State 3. And then I'd probably put one of 4 teams there. I'd probably put either Texas A&M, Florida, Cincinnati, or Northwestern in that 4 spot. All right, so then 5, I'd put Clemson. I think you got to put Clemson at 5, and then the remaining of those 3 teams right behind there. Georgia's at 9 right now. They're at 5-2, which is bullshit again.
I agree. BYU's better.
Here's my question. How is Georgia at 5-2 in COVID-19 era football? How are they number 9? And they're the team like BYU at 14 that's 9-0 on the year that has demolished everyone. Yes, they don't play the greatest competition, but frankly, the reason they don't play competition, some of these teams have been canceled. They got games canceled and postponed, and they actually had to change opponents based on COVID-19, based on everything going on in the world right now. So they can't be punished, in my opinion. They shouldn't be punished, in my opinion.
You don't punish Clemson.
For their schedule. And this reminds me, I'm going about with BYU, this reminds me a lot of UCF from a few years ago. UCF was a team that went undefeated. They called themselves the national champions. They called them. They got a banner. They now hang it up. They say, okay, we won the national championship. They didn't win. They didn't win shit, to be honest with you. But again, this team in BYU is doing the exact same thing that they did years ago. And that is why I believe you have to extend it. Because you have to open it up. If you open it up to 8 teams right now, BYU still wouldn't be in.
Right, and they should be.
Georgia at 5-2 would be in.
Yeah.
That is a joke. That is an absolute joke to the college football committee. It is a joke to anyone that watches college football. It's actually embarrassing.
Right, and you also have Oklahoma there too, Matt, sitting there at 6-2 at 11. I mean, the whole college football playoff is just a little bit. I don't know what they were doing in that war room yesterday. Mask on, mask off, whatever it was. But someo's head was not on right. But I got a question for you.
All hell is going to break loose, though. That's all I'm saying. All hell is going to break loose as soon as Clemson beats Notre Dame.
Well, that was my next question.
When Clemson beats Notre Dame in the ACC championship, which will happen again, that's why you have to. That's why, in my opinion, you have to put them at 5 right now. Because they haven't proved anything this year. They really haven't. Clemson, the only reason Clemson's at 3 right now is because of last year. And the year before, and the year before, and the year before, and because of who their coach is and who their quarterback is. Absolutely. Frankly, that's the only reason any of these teams start ranked high, right? It's because their history. That's the only reason Georgia's at 9, because their history.
Yeah, SEC football.
It's bullshit. You're not giving opportunity. You should be ranking these teams based on what they're doing this season. Yeah. And again, I understand you have to weight things differently based on who they play and based on their schedules. You can't take history into account, in my opinion. You can't, and even if you do, it has to be so minor. But the only reason Clemson's at 3 right now is because of who their coach is, who their team has been the past few years, and who their quarterback is. But 7-1, as soon as they beat Notre Dame, they move up now. Now you have to move up to number 2 in the country.
Well, right. I think that's why you said sit them at 5, because now what do you say in that ACC championship game when Clemson does the 3 beats the 2? But then I could go back and say, well, earlier in the season, technically the 2 beat the 3 because they had 1 loss. I don't know what you do.
They're setting this up right now. And again, I think this is a gift to Notre Dame, because they're setting this up so that when Clemson beats Notre Dame in the ACC championship, like you said, it's going to be a 3 seed beating the 2 seed. It's not going to be the 5 or the 6 seed beating the 2 seed and knocking the Notre Dame out of the playoffs. Because again, in a year where everything is relevant to the bottom line of an organization, everything is relevant to ratings, everything is people, take a second. Again, that's what I said. The problem I have with the college football committee and the college football playoff committee is the fact that it is not common sense driven. It is not. It's way too political. They looked way too into this. And I give them credit for trying it. But the only reason Notre Dame's 2 and Clemson's 3, Notre Dame should be 2. Again, I want to start there. Notre Dame should be 2. The only reason Clemson's 3 is why. Because when Notre Dame loses to Clemson, Notre Dame's still going to be there. Why? Because Notre Dame gets the numbers. Notre Dame has fans across this country for whatever reason, for God knows why. Every 40-year-old man who has a little bit of money in his pocket, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just going to speak clearly to Pickball Nation out there. Anyone who's a sports betting man in this country loves Notre Dame for whatever reason. I don't. But if you're 40 years old and you have 1 or 2 kids, and you like wearing a baseball cap, and you drive around in a Mercedes or a BMW, frankly, for some odd reason, you have a Notre Dame shirt on. Why? I have no idea. No clue. But that's why Notre Dame's there. That's why Notre Dame gets they're the only team in college football that technically doesn't have a conference. They're the only team in college football that, again, has their own deal for ratings. For ratings purposes.
That goes back to your bottom
NBC.
line.
They have an NBC television deal. Why? Not because they're the best team in college football. They haven't been the best team in college football for years.
Dude.
But I'm telling you right now, this goes back to bottom line theory. This goes back to the fact that everyone wants to see Notre Dame there. I don't either. I want to see the best 4 teams. If we're doing 4 teams, I want to see the best 4 teams. And right now, Notre Dame should be there. But when Clemson beats them, they shouldn't. They should be thrown out. And right now, they set this up by putting Clemson at 3 for no reason, in my opinion. There's no reason Clemson should be at number 3. And by putting them at 3, you're setting it up to give Notre Dame a free chance, a free loss. And I'd much rather see Florida. I'd much rather see Northwestern. I'd much rather see BYU than to see a 1-loss Notre Dame team who plays in an ACC this year, and only major win was over who? Clemson without their quarterback.
Right.
I don't like that. If they lose, if they go undefeated, this team should be there. But if they don't, they shouldn't. And the fact that Clemson's 3 right now is telling you they're giving them a free pass, a free loss. Notre Dame could lose to Clemson, and they're still in. They physically can't hop them and then have other teams hop. It just doesn't make sense.
What happens, I'll give you a hypothetical. Notre Dame, like you were saying earlier, North Carolina on Saturday, trap game. Notre Dame loses to North Carolina on Saturday. What happens in Notre Dame? Are they just completely done? Or is it over? 1 loss Notre Dame team to a North Carolina team. Where do you put
that's why I hope, and I'm going to tell you right now, that is why I am crossing my fingers. That I'm right. And if I am, Notre Dame's not going to be there.
Right. They can't.
Notre Dame will not be in the conversation. But here's the other thing. Here's my question to you. When North Carolina beats Notre Dame this Saturday, when that happens, what happens? Because does that mean Clemson goes to 2 with a loss? I mean, that's what I'm telling you.
Right, yeah.
How do you put Clemson at 2?
I know, I'm looking at it right now.
So you're going to have, if Notre Dame loses, when they lose, in my opinion, I think, again, I'll tell you guys, Pickball Nation, we have picks coming out this weekend for college football. We will have Notre Dame losing. Artificial intelligence doesn't lie. This team is not as good as they look on paper. Artificial intelligence does not lie. Notre Dame will lose this weekend. And when they do, I think the committee screwed themselves.
Yeah.
Because now you have to put Clemson at 2. You have to put Ohio State, who will be undefeated, at 3.
And then I think then they put Notre Dame at 4.
And then what do you do with Notre Dame? You put him at 4 now. You put him at 5. You put him at 6. It just is way too much.
Right.
Way too much. And then you still have teams that'll be on the fringe.
Yeah.
Like, in my opinion, if Notre Dame loses to number 25 in the country, if North Carolina, who's number 25 in the country, beats Notre Dame, who's number 2 in the country right now, this weekend, in my opinion, Florida should be number 4.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Instantaneously, Florida should move to 4. But how do you have them hop over Texas A&M?
Right, I don't think Texas A&M should. Again, eye test. Florida, Texas A&M. We've seen a lot of Florida football. I think if they aren't 4, they should have been 5. Because like you're saying, you drop Notre Dame to a 4. Florida, how many more games does Florida have to win to prove that they are in the top 4? If I'm Dan Mullen, I'm losing my mind right now that we're in the top spot.
I told you my 4 teams going into it. I think it's going to be Alabama, Clemson, Florida, and Northwestern. I think they're set up perfectly. I think it's all in their own hands. If Clemson wins out, they're in. Okay? If Alabama wins out, they're in. If Florida wins out and they win the SEC, they're in. I think they can maybe even lose again and maybe get in. Because, again, if we want the 4 best teams in the country to compete in this tournament, if we want the 4 best teams in a COVID-19 year where we're seeing, if we want it, we have it. And I think right now, the 4 best teams in the country, the 4 best teams, forget their ranking, forget these polls, the 4 best teams, according to the Pick Vault right now, in my opinion, is Alabama, number 1. And I think that could change at any moment in time. I think the best team in the country right now is Florida. And they lost that game to Texas A&M. They got screwed down the stretch with a few calls, screwed down the stretch, and they played so poor early in that game. So poor. They came back, and they really, really, really almost came all the way back. And if it weren't for a few calls down the stretch, I believe they would have done it. And if they're undefeated, they should be number 1 in the country right now. They're the best team in the country in college football today.
Right.
Florida.
If you pair up Florida and that Alabama team, like we were saying, that's going to be a battle of the offenses. But I'll be honest with you, this could be the first time in a few years that we're going to say the Florida defense is better than the Alabama defense. And Saban stated that their defense is nowhere near where it used to be. And all they really rely on now is Mac Jones. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver, is going to be a top prospect this year. He, I think, tore the Achilles or the ACL, whatever it is. He's out for the season. So it's Mac Jones against the world over there in Alabama, sitting at number 1. And it might be a little too much pressure for Mac Jones. I agree with you, though, Matt. I think this Florida team, again, if you haven't seen them, they are a scary, scary football team.
Absolutely.
Around.
No, 100%. And again, you're talking about right now the way that they did this, and I think they did it intentionally. Again, when things look odd, it's done intentionally. I've said it multiple times this episode, and I'll say it multiple times again. When things look odd and don't make sense, they make sense. That's simple.
That's it.
When things don't make sense, there's a reason. And it's simple here. The College Football Committee is saying we don't care about the 4 best teams in the country. We don't. We care about who's going to get the most ratings, the most people to tune in, the most people to watch. And frankly, that's the society we live in today. Who can get the most likes? Who can get the most views? Who can get the most? That is the society we live in.
100%.
And all I'm saying is they know Notre Dame will draw a crowd. They know that people will tune in to watch Notre Dame. They know Alabama will draw a crowd. They know Clemson will draw a crowd. And they know Ohio State will draw a crowd. That is why they're the 4 best teams. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Forget the conversation we just had. If I said to you, Dan, right now, with the climate we're in the society we live in today, who do you think could get the most people in the country to watch a game?
I'd have to say either. I mean, it's tough. You got Notre Dame.
Either Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, or Ohio State. Those 4. That's it.
You got Notre Dame. They have their own channel, really. Bama. They have the history of college football and Saban and, the homeland of,
no,
being
they have
a champion.
the whole SEC, Dan.
And then you got Clemson and Trevor Lawrence, who's been the best, prospect since Peyton Manning. So, again, and then Ohio State. You got Justin Fields. You got the Big Ten. It's almost like they cover each conference, obviously.
No, I'm just telling you, you and I are from Jersey, and you and I went to colleges in multiple different states.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, forget, in high school, kids wore Notre Dame shirts. In high school, kids wore Alabama shirts. In high school, kids wore Clemson shirts. In high school, kids wore Ohio State shirts that have never had anything to do with Ohio State, Clemson, or Notre Dame, or Alabama.
Could be the logo.
Dude, it's nothing to do with the logo. Nothing to do with the logo. This is everything to do with ratings, everything to do with the fact that these teams draw crowds. And frankly, that's the only reason these 4 teams are where they are right now.
Right. I feel like nothing ever changes. You look at the top 4 and it's always the same year in, year out. I mean, you've harped on it multiple times. It's always the same ordeal every single time.
If you want the playoff, if you want the best 4 teams in the country, then you got to extend this thing to 8. Because in the end of the day, if you extend this to 8 and Alabama has to go in right now and play Northwestern, I think that's a hell of a game.
It's a game.
I think if number 2 in the country, Notre Dame, had to go out there and play Cincinnati, I think that's a hell of a game. I think if Clemson, who's number 3 in the country right now, who's 7-1, has their quarterback back, if they had to go and play Florida,
would be
number
nuts.
6 in the country, I think that's a hell of a game.
Nuts.
If Ohio State, who's 4-0, had to go play Texas A&M, who's 5-1, who beat Florida, who lost to Alabama, if they went head-to-head right now, that'd be a hell of a game. So take the top 8. Take the top 8. Because if you take the top 8 and you see those things, guess what? We'll get the Final 4. We'll get the Final 4 because I think 1 through 8, those are all about the same equivalent teams.
Right, and I was going to say, you might even see those 6, 7. I think there's 2 teams in that bottom half that you just said that easily could beat those top 4 teams, like you said.
I think right now it'd be very, very, very difficult for Clemson to beat Florida.
Right. Oh,
I think especially with the fact that Lawrence hasn't been playing because of COVID. We saw Cam Newton in the NFL struggle with coming back after COVID. There's going to be lingering effects.
Their defense isn't 100%.
So I think that'd be very difficult for Clemson to beat Florida right now. And I think it'd be almost impossible for Notre Dame to beat Cincinnati. And I do think Northwestern would give Alabama a hell of a game because, like you said, Alabama's not the Alabama of the past. And if you take away their history and you don't consider who their coach is and you don't consider what they've done the past 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, I don't think Alabama's number 1 in the country right now. If you take into account and you forget the past, you forget, and I get you can't do that. But if you can just forget the past and look at this unbiasedly, I'm telling you right now, none of these 4 teams that are in the top 4 right now would be there. Maybe 1. Maybe Ohio State. Maybe Notre Dame.
And it's
those two. Other than that, I mean, Notre Dame's 8-0. That's the only reason I think they would be potentially, and they beat Clemson.
Right.
And again, as much as we give Clemson the pass, which I think is bullshit, we give Clemson the pass because they didn't have Trevor Lawrence. The problem that I see with that is their quarterback, who came in, their freshman phenom that came in, was a number 1 prospect in all of college sports.
Yeah, he'd play anywhere.
It's the same. Again, go back to the college football playoff a few years ago. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was exactly. Again, the years are kind of all meshing together because of COVID here. But go back 2-3 years. And in the national championship, Jalen Hurts sucked. The backup quarterback, Tua, comes in the game and wins it. That's a backup quarterback.
He could have started
these
the whole time.
Organizations, these teams at the top 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 organizations and teams across the board, their number 2 guy at quarterback is just as good as anyone else's number 1. That's just the truth.
Right. Sometimes they're even deeper, Matt. That's why it blows my mind. Some of these teams, you go to Alabama, you could go play wherever you want. You have offers all over the table. Why sit?
Jacoby Brissett, perfect example. He came in the college football playoff a few years ago and got Ohio State a championship when Urban Meyer was the coach. I'm just saying, this goes back. You're talking about just organizationally speaking. These guys, that's why I don't think it's fair to give Clemson a pass at all. Clemson should not be a top 4 team, and that's coming from me. My mom went to Clemson. My family loves Clemson.
I like Clemson too.
And frankly, they should not be in right now with a loss because there are too many teams. BYU should be in before Clemson right now, to be honest with you. Frankly, I get that sounds nuts, but frankly, if you're going by strength of schedule, and you're giving them the free pass on the loss. Okay, that's what I'm telling you. Their hardest game this year was the loss.
Right. So
Notre Dame, if you're giving them the pass on the loss, they haven't played shit. They haven't played anybody.
Right. And another team that bothered me too, Matt, I'm looking at this Ohio State schedule. They beat Nebraska, so nobody. They beat Penn State, and in my opinion, this Penn State team is non-existent. They suck. Then you beat Rutgers. You get canceled against Maryland. Then you barely edge out a win against Indiana, 42-35. And they were winning the game 42-21 in the 4th quarter, so they almost blow that one. I don't think there's anything to even say about this Ohio State team either. They're nothing to write home about, and unfortunately, in the Big Ten, the way that season's going so far, there's really no competition. Michigan, once again, is bad. So yeah, it is only Ohio State, but you're kind of dealing with the same thing that Clemson deals with in the ACC. You're not playing anybody. So again, I think that Ohio State shouldn't even be in the top 4 also.
Well, we'll see what happens moving forward. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to shift around, and I do believe this is the year. If you're going to extend it to 8, I think this is the year you got to do it because, again, like I just said to you, there's going to be conversation no matter what. There's going to be controversy no matter what when you're doing it the way they're doing it. And that is why in the future, I think it has to be more systematically changed, from the system. We've been talking about, again, in the society we live in, we talk about systematic racism, systematic changes that need to happen in our country. Same thing here. There needs to be systematic change, right? Maybe what they should do, and this is just my idea, maybe what they should do is take the Power 5 conferences. If you win the Power 5 conferences, you will get an automatic bid. An automatic bid to the college football playoff. Congratulations. You won that. You won one of the conferences, one of the 5 main conferences in college football. And then there should be 3 teams. 3 teams. 2 of them, in my opinion, should come from the Power 5 conferences. 2. And then 1 should be required to not come from the Power 5 conferences.
I like that.
1 should be required to not come from the Power 5 conferences.
So it's your BYU,
and then you can,
for instance.
Then you can rank them however you want. You can put whoever you want at 1, 2, 3. I don't care, as long as it comes in that way, because then you could have the conversation. You could say somebody who's on the fringe. You take the best team that's not a Power 5 team and you get them in there.
Right.
And you know what? I think that'd be a hell of a way to do it.
Yeah,
and if there's a real conversation, about a team that's not a Power 5 conference, and there's multiple of them, say like a BYU and maybe this year Cincinnati. Right? Cincinnati and BYU. Maybe they play head-to-head to get in, a play-in game. I think people would love it. I get it. We don't want to extend the season so much. Well, frankly, we have no choice, because if we don't extend the season, we're not going to get a real national championship.
Right,
we're not going to get a real champion, because you're not going to see the best 4 teams go head-to-head. You're not going to see the best teams in college football go head-to-head. And that's going to be a major problem for the sport.
I agree. And you're going to go back to the whole thing of, did this season count? Is there an asterisk around that championship? Like you're saying, make it so it's a season. You're playing football. Have some fun. Again, ratings, the bottom line. Wouldn't you want more games, more excitement? I'm with you, Matt.
Instead of playing some of these bullshit bowls, make the bowls more important. We don't care about, again, frankly, I'm sorry if you went here. Or what, we don't care about Eastern Illinois, Milwaukee State. I mean, these teams that are somehow in a bowl game because they reached a moment. I get it. Exactly. It's all about sponsorships and it's all about money. But all I'm saying is we have to look at it more directly, and I think there needs to be change. Dan, we could talk about this for days. We could sit here and talk about this for days, and frankly, we're going to have to, because moving forward, these things are going to change left and right. And I think, again, this weekend, total shift coming up. And I think maybe the college football playoff is expecting that, and that's maybe why they did some of the things they did.
I like that.
Again, when things don't make sense, I think it makes sense.
We're going to find out.
So I do believe this weekend we're looking for maybe a major upset coming in from number 25 in the country, North Carolina, over number 2 in the country, Notre Dame. I think that totally will shift everything. And maybe what happens there is you would jump Ohio State over Clemson and put Clemson at 3, Ohio State at 2, and then add in number 4 team, either Florida, one of the 4 teams I told you. Before we end this episode, everyone out there, I want to remind you, tomorrow's episode is a Thanksgiving special. Dan and I are going to break down the 3 games that are being played on Thursday, tomorrow on the 26th. And we're talking about 3 games, and I'll rattle them off here. At 12:30 with the Texans taking on the Lions. At 4:30 with the Washington football team taking on the Dallas Cowboys. And then finally capping off the night, we have a battle between 2 of the best teams in not only the AFC, but the AFC North nonetheless, going head-to-head as the Ravens and the Steelers, the undefeated Steelers. The Steelers team that obviously I've been saying from day one, I think this team wins the AFC North, and everyone thought I was an ass for saying that at the beginning of the year. Who is the ass now? That's all I'm going to say, because
the Ravens are,
the Steelers are a team that's 10-0. And Colin Cowherd, I hope you're listening. I'm sure you're not, but I hope you're listening out there, Colin Cowherd, because you said that the Ravens would go undefeated this year. They started the season 3-0, and Colin Cowherd had a whole episode, Dan, on how the Ravens are going to go undefeated. Well, how does that look now, Colin? Because they're 6-4, and the AFC, in my opinion, the AFC champions, Steelers, are 10-0. And again, we're talking about a team that is just playing right and clicking on all cylinders. It goes back to, again, smart quarterback play, smart coaching play, and very, very strong defense. Defense wins championships. Don't forget it, even in the new era NFL. Defense will win championships. New England knows it. We've seen it for years in New England. And frankly, we've seen it with the Chiefs last year. They went out and got defenses. Guess what? That 49ers team that was in the Super Bowl last year had the best defense in the league.
We're seeing it with the Rams.
2 years ago, when the Rams were there, it was all about the defense. All about the fact that their defense got them there. Again, much as we like seeing the long ball, defense wins you championships. Defense gets you to championships, and defense wins playoff games. Okay, so again, moving down the stretch here, we're going to be talking about the Steelers for a long, long time.
Yeah, we are.
It's a cold winter, Danny.
Yeah,
it's a cold winter.
I was going to say, we're going to get Colin Cowherd on the phone. Don't worry, Matt. I think you guys got to go at it. Because, again, this Ravens team's coming in tomorrow a little shorthanded. We'll go into that more tomorrow, obviously, for the episode. But
so, again, we're breaking down that and much more. And we're excited for tomorrow's episode. And we're excited and we're thankful you guys are listening. Make sure you guys spend time with your family and let them know that you love them. And again, if you can't spend time with family, make sure you spend it with someone that you're close with and somebody that you're thankful is in your life, and we're thankful you're in our lives. And again, we look forward to this upcoming weekend. We have big news coming out in the coming days, specifically around Cyber Monday. I know we've put some ideas out there for you guys, but a big announcement coming very shortly, and I don't think you'll be disappointed on Cyber Monday. Maybe a product will be available that everyone out there will love. So, again, thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. This has been a great episode of The Pick Vault. Get ready to unlock your money. And, Dan, I believe we are
OUT out.
You've been listening to The Pick Vault, the premier predictive sports media platform and entertainment network. Matt Taylor and Danny Siv are ready to make you a winner and unlock your money. Make sure to hit the website at www.thepickvault.com. Find the app and subscribe to find exclusive member content, including our picks, live updates, and sports news. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at The Pick Vault, taking sports betting to the next level. Helping you unlock your money. Till next time, this is The Pick Vault, signing off.
It's the Pick Vault. Gonna sit you down and listen to this real talk. Ain't no first or second option, this the default. Turning picks into these dollars, gonna let them fall. Raining down these daily winnings like an aerosol. Analytics calculated just to win it all. Problems when it comes to choosing, we got all them solved. Got the picks that needin' fixed, and you know who to call. Cause this the Pick Vault.